What's going on, everybody out there? Welcome to the IGN All-Star Community Podcast. This is episode 12 of the podcast. I am one of your hosts, the epic Jake James Lugo. And with me, I have my compatriot, Mr. Peter Lopez. Peter, my man, how have you been?
Hey, I've been really good, man. And from what I hear, you've been pretty busy as well.
Yes, I've been roaming around the world map over here, going over to New York. I had a nice, good trip, during the Valentine's Day weekend over to New York City, which was really fun. I got to see a lot of cool stuff, and a whole bunch of stuff has happened. I got to go check out the Nintendo World, which was a big deal for me. And I know you were going nuts over the pictures I was sending over Twitter, which was crazy. I mean, I saw a lot of good stuff. They had in Nintendo World, they had a whole display because that was around the release time of Majora's Mask 3DS. And they had a whole retrospective setup and diorama of all the Nintendo related stuff related to the Legend of Zelda, starting with the NES title, going all the way through to the release now of Majora's Mask 3D. And I saw some really neat stuff, a lot of collector's items, a lot of stuff I've never even known about that were exclusive related, little trinkets, collectible statues. Even this one piece of it looks like a glass etching of Link, I believe from Ocarina of Time or Skyward Sword, which looked awesome. There was a lot of neat stuff. All the 3DSs that they had, for Link Between Worlds and Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time, all the Game Boy and the different cartridge exclusives, all this neat, cool stuff. It even had a life-size replica of Majora's Mask, which was nuts.
Jesus, man. I sent you that tweet. I probably would have had a heart attack if I went in there. Right,
you would have loved it.
Oh my gosh! I would have probably had a heart attack, passed out, maybe with foam at the mouth.
It was really that good. Yeah, I really believe that because they even had a bunch of cool statues, which were neat. They had this really good one of Ganondorf. I believe I don't remember if it was from Ocarina of Time or Hyrule Warriors, but it was a big statue of him that looked awesome.
And they had just displays there where people could just hang out and play 3DS, right? I think
here's the way that they had it. They had it split into two floors, where the bottom floor is where you could buy a lot of stuff. You could actually buy your 3DS downstairs if you wanted to buy the new 3DS. And they had little stations set up with different 3DS games you could play. I know I was with a friend that they were able to play Ultimate NES Remix there on one of the 3DSs, as well as also play a demo of Majora's Mask that was on there, which was neat. And a couple other games here and there. And they had this whole little Pokemon setup, a little lounge spot for people to grab. There was 4 or 6 3DSs on the table that you just grab there and you could play Pokemon together, which is pretty neat. And, they had all these other, clothing and memorabilia of stuff, that was Nintendo. They had these Nintendo playing cards that were Zelda-themed. That was pretty neat, just regular playing cards. It was pretty cool and stuff like that. As well as all the mangas for The Legend of Zelda that you could buy there. And a whole bunch of other Nintendo-related stuff, from those series. And upstairs, which was really where, a lot of the cooler stuff was the retrospective diorama, as well as also a look back at all the Nintendo handhelds, starting with the Game & Watch, all the way through to the new 3DS, where they had it laid out. And I finally got to see the Game Boy actual system that was in, I believe it was the Gulf War.
Oh, yeah.
That was there. That was all messed up and was running Tetris.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
It was pretty neat to see that in person. And it was oh, that's pretty cool. You could see it's all burnt up and messed up, but it's still playing Tetris with its badly lit screen. You could see there the green stuff, and it's actually just running the demo of Tetris, which is pretty cool.
Wow. What was the amiibo scene like? I remember you
and I was just going to get into that because next to that, on the other side of the room, was the setup for the Wii U stuff, the Wii U's stations where you could play all the games that were coming out recently, including Kirby and the Rainbow Curse.
Nice.
That was coming out a couple days later. Right. You were able to play that, Mario Kart 8, play Hyrule Warriors, as well as Smash Brothers, which again had a huge setup. The Amiibo setup, they had a bunch of little spots on the walls where you could buy Amiibos, which pretty ironically enough and hilarious enough, that it was the same type of Amiibos that every other store had. That was the only ones, the only characters. Yeah. But they did have a display showing off all the Amiibos for all the different sets that had come out thus far, which was pretty neat to finally see them in person. and such. And there was a bunch of like Nintendo fans foaming at the mouth.
Yeah.
Looking at the villager, looking at Marth, looking at the Wii Fit trainer, and such. But it was neat to see that, as well as all the other different stuff. There was a whole Pokemon related section upstairs that had a bunch of clothing and such. But really, the meat and potatoes was that diorama and the game setups, which is very, very cool to see.
Man, see, I would have thought Nintendo would have been the Nintendo. Is it called the Nintendo World Store?
Nintendo World,
right?
yeah.
Like, see, I would have thought those guys would have been always stocked on Amiibo, right? Like, I would have figured that's...
You would think, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, just to kind of hear that they have the same pickings as, Target, Walmart, whatever. That's kind of disappointing, but, I mean, I would just go for the lore, just like I'm sure you do.
Here's the other crazy thing, too, which I thought was funny. The new 3DS SKUs that they had over there were the exact same as all the other stores as well. They had, what is it? I believe when I went in there that the person behind the counter told me that later on that evening they were going to get more of the Monster Hunter SKU for the new 3DS, that bundle.
Oh, wow.
Such. Yeah. And I even asked them if they had the Majora's Mask one. They were like, nope. I was like, wow, this is the Nintendo store. Yeah, no Majora's Mask. And now, granted, it's sold out everywhere. Sure. I really believe that Nintendo needs to make more of those things and not make it a limited edition because people want it really bad and such. And I'm pretty sure eventually they should make one, if not for Smash Brothers, but for maybe codename Steam, as well as any other like different stuff. But like they need to up their stock over there because it's kind of embarrassing. To go there and not have the one SKU that's a Nintendo IP, first party that you don't have in stock. And all they had was the gray and the red. New 3DS over there.
Right. Like, I mean, it's not... I mean, even if it is like the Nintendo store, I guess to an extent it's not necessarily their fault either, considering they're getting their stock from basically the Nintendo warehouse. And I remember when this whole Majora's Mask pre-order thing, the system pre-order thing was going down, I called basically GameStop PR, and basically what I was told, it's not necessarily their fault. It's really whatever Nintendo is distributing. So maybe it's really just a Nintendo problem. Like maybe Nintendo really just has a grip on distributing more of these systems, because there's people like you, who want to grab this system, especially for $199. And granted, it doesn't come with the video game. It's still the fact that it's a collector's edition.
You still want it
at standard price, right?
Yeah.
So it's like I think maybe Nintendo kind of has to step it up in that aspect and get the ball rolling, because there's plenty of people out there that want to grab the Monster Hunter 3DS, the Majora's Mask 3DS, but they can't because their local GameStop only maybe was taking pre-orders for like 5 minutes, and they sold out. And
it's nothing new for Nintendo. I mean, it's a big deal, and it kind of sucks. And I really hope that they make more. If not, give us a different SKU,
right?
To buy that isn't limited edition that we can actually buy in the store.
Yeah.
But I will say one thing though, which was a huge deal: the Street Pass game at Nintendo World was serious, and I mean serious. Everybody and their mother had their 3DS there, even though they were probably either going to go buy the new 3DS or just hanging out, checking out all the stuff. The Street Pass game was indeed very serious.
How many did
and
you
I did get? I got a lot of the pink panels for most of the different new 3D panels that we have on there. I didn't complete any because there was a lot that I had to get through, and I wanted to get the pink puzzle pieces, at first before I get anything else, because I thought that was more important. But I was able to get all the pink puzzle pieces for all the latest panels that I haven't yet to complete yet, which is cool.
Awesome.
But outside of that, I got to go check out, Toys R Us, the big Toys R Us that was down there. I got to see Times Square, which was awesome. And also, I got to shoot a pilot pitch for a friend of mine over at Gamer Fan Nation, which I'm going to talk about later, in one of our news stories. But I was actually able to hang out with them there, my friend Antoine, as well as my friend Red, which was very cool to see them. I'll probably see them again at E3, which will be fun, because I'm not going to PAX East this year. And yeah, I had a blast at New York. New York was awesome. It was a really fun trip for me.
Yeah, it sounds like a blast, dude. I mean, not a lot of people could say that they've been to Times Square, and the fact that you can say that you've been there, that's got to be great,
It's cool. It's not the first time I've gone, but every time I go, it's a treat.
No, you're
it's
rubbing
really
it
cool.
in now, aren't you?
Well, I'm just saying. I will say one thing though: going to Chinatown and having Chinese food is a trip. It's a real trip, and also the Lily was pretty cool. They got some good desserts down there. But forgetting about my trip, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this episode. Let's talk about what's hot on IGN.
All right.
Okay, because IGN's got some stuff going on. Even though it's a kind of a pseudo slow week of news, there was some interesting stuff that happened.
Absolutely.
Some interesting tidbits. Number one, you brought this to my attention. This Project Ukulele, okay, which is supposed to be apparently the spiritual successor to Banjo-Kazooie. It's with former Rare developers. Okay, there's a story of it over on IGN.com by Seth Macy. Okay, he goes, former core members of Rare have announced that they are working on a new game. The new team studio, okay, is called Platonic Games. Plans to reveal details of its upcoming game, Project Ukulele, later this week. Okay, they're trying to turn it into a worthy spiritual successor to the game's team members that. For some of the different titles they worked on in the past, including Donkey Kong 64, Banjo-Kazooie, and Viva Pinata. Now, this sounds pretty cool.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, I think this rubs more salt into the wound of getting an actual good new Banjo-Kazooie game. But it's interesting because these guys know how to make platformers. They know what's up when it comes to that style of game. Their portfolio and their reputation says it all. Such, I think this would be pretty cool. I could definitely foresee this maybe showing up on like a Kickstarter, if not, going multi-platform here and there. That'd be interesting. What's your take from this?
I mean, I think right now it's not necessarily going to hit multi-platform. I mean, I hope I'm wrong. Like, I hope it lands on the PS4, the Xbox One, and Wii U. But I kind of see this being more of a maybe Xbox One, PS4 title. Which is unfortunate because as a Nintendo fan yourself, the Wii U is struggling in regards to grabbing third-party support.
Definitely.
So this may be something that Nintendo may drop the ball on, but hopefully I'm proved wrong. But in regards to this Project Ukulele being announced, like, I was ecstatic, right? Like, I was excited to hear this because I've played Banjo-Kazooie. I've never finished the video game, but from what I played, which was about half of it, or maybe more than half,
it's classic.
It was great. Yeah, this was popping back in the day, and it's still pretty good now on the Xbox 360. Everybody has their own little nitpicks here and there on the video game, but when you grab these individuals who have made Donkey Kong, I'm assuming it's Donkey Kong 64 considering.
Yeah, it's Donkey Kong 64, and also keep in mind, Rare, besides Donkey Kong, Banjo-Kazooie, Perfect Dark,
right.
Jet Force Gemini, these guys.
And I meant to say, actually, Donkey Kong Country. So when you kind of think about the Donkey Kong Country team, that was like a whole 2D platformer. Like, that was revolutionary. Imagine a Banjo-Kazooie 2D platformer, right? Like Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze. Something like that with Banjo-Kazooie would be great, and that's what I'm kind of having trouble.
I honestly don't want that though. No, I want Banjo-Kazooie 3D platform.
Well, see,
that's what I want.
This is what I'm kind of like having trouble with, is that it's a worthy spiritual successor. So really quick, if you can explain to me what spiritual successor is. I kind of have an idea, but I don't
here's
really
what
want
it
to be
is.
Wrong.
This is what you call a classic example of PR talk. Okay, PR talk usually means that what we're saying is not what we're actually saying, but we're implying because of the lingo that we're using. Basically, what this means to me is that because they're getting together a lot of the same guys that worked on Banjo-Kazooie, Donkey Kong meaning Donkey Kong 64 to me, and Viva Pinata, which is some of the later, towards the middle end of the N64's life cycle, those guys that worked together on those classic games, Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie. I think that this is going to be a 3D platforming type of game that isn't necessarily going to be a Banjo-Kazooie game. It's going to obviously more likely be a new IP. But if it plays very similar to those style of games, and they make a game of where they had initial plans to make a Banjo 3 game, which was a thing back in the day before it got canceled and changed up into Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. This could be really, maybe that could spark a flame for maybe either Microsoft to go to them, or to cause maybe Microsoft to pick up some of those guys to come make a proper Banjo-Kazooie game. Or if that doesn't case, it's not the case that happens, we end up getting a game that plays very similar to a classic game that we loved back in the day, and it's a new IP. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, like, even digging a little deeper into Seth's article, like, you're going to grab a programmer from Donkey Kong Country, so that programmer is going to be involved with Project Ukulele. So, I mean, maybe you can see a 2D platformer, and it's going to have, obviously, I think, like a dual character set, just like Banjo and Kazooie, because if you look on IGN.com and you look up the Project Ukulele article, you can also see a picture of basically two sets of eyes, right? Which I kind of assumed was Banjo-Kazooie for a second, just because you have this top pair of eyes.
Maybe it's a new tag team. Maybe it's a new tag team. But like looking at this picture now that you're mentioning, it's very classic Rare type of S, because they're very whimsical and they have these colorful characters and environments, and they tell colorful stories more so. Like, you got a lot of storytelling developers like, Telltale and, a bunch of other developers out now, which are a little more darker and serious in nature. Rare, back in the day, was always that fun type of story. Even though it had like some darker themes here and there, it was still a fun, whimsical type of game to play.
For sure. I agree. Like I said, I really hope that this thing launches and does very well, because I mean, this whole Project Ukulele thing kind of has me, as you would say, flipping tables, dude. Like
flipping tables. Wow, is that good, huh?
It really tables. Is. I'm ready for another Banjo-Kazooie. I did play Nuts and Bolts on the Xbox 360. It was okay. It was all right. But what I didn't really like,
that game was horrible.
What I didn't like about it was the fact that the font was super small. You're looking at
that too. That was annoying.
Like five sized, I guess you could say.
Five size.
It was small, which was kind of sucky, because it had a lot of dialogue in there and a lot of chatter, and I just couldn't see it. And I have glasses, dude. I have bifocals on. I couldn't read that. Like, that was a real big turnoff for me. But I really hope they nail it on the head this time. I'm really looking forward to what Playtonic Games has to do.
Me too. But like I said before, this just throws more salt in that wound. That's just, I want my Microsoft, come on. I just got an Xbox One, which I'll get into later. Okay, I just bought an Xbox One. I want a new Banjo game. Come on, give it to me.
Who's more likely to pick this up? You think PlayStation, Microsoft, or you think they'll meet together and kind of?
I think it'll be multi-platform. I really think, and I think that a lot of fans, a lot of gamers that know of Rare's pedigree, especially a lot of the past games a lot of these guys have worked on, will be the ones to pick this up, and they'll be the ones to really spread the word of mouth if it's any good. And then maybe things will change up.
I think if anyone's going to grab it, it's going to be Microsoft. Only considering the fact that Microsoft has had a connection for the longest time with Rare. Now, granted, Rare hasn't been keeping their end of the bargain because they've been distributing crappy Kinect video games. So I think they're going to take that around the house and shoot it like Old Yeller. So that whole stuff is going to be done. But I mean, I see, and that's the thing too, is Microsoft's been working with them for so long. So I think maybe Phil Spencer is like, hey, we've been working for the longest time. We totally got your back. Bring this over to Xbox. I mean, when was the last time you seen a Rare game on a Sony console?
That you never did. Period.
There you go. I mean, that's Rare has had a connection with Microsoft for years. So I kind of see this video game launching more on an Xbox One console.
It would definitely be smart. I mean, hey, if it goes well, I know Phil Spencer at one point, he was talking about having different games for different genres, to expand the Xbox One's library of titles to really make them more diversified. Such having this, and then maybe have being able to get this either as an exclusive or a timed exclusive will help maybe plant the seeds for that righteous and legit Banjo-Kazooie game that we wanted for the longest. Yeah. There's a ton of different ways it could go. I think it's pretty good though. But moving on from there, we have some more news. Okay, the Order 1886. Now, there's been a real storm of diversity, diverse opinions, and mudslinging here and there, and outrageous, crazy, different things said and discussed about the Order 1886. Now, the review is out on IGN. You could definitely go to IGN.com and actually look up the score of the extra here. I'm going to look it up now because I'm probably going to refer to it.
It's a 6.5.
Actually, a 6.5. Okay. Now a lot of other websites and outlets have been hitting around that range as far as the Order 1886. The game apparently is not as good as everybody thought it or hoped it would be. And one of the things I remember playing the Order at E3 and seeing it even before then, and actually saying that one of my biggest problems with the game, from what I saw, was that not only did it look washed out, as far as there wasn't a lot of color injected into it. It looked very, very grayish all around. But also a lot of the gameplay was kind of subpar. It was okay. It wasn't anything to really get too excited about, because there was I believe they said in the IGN review that there's a lot of other games out now that do it better. that take that same formula and do it better. Now, a lot of the big controversy was the length of the game. Like, apparently, there was a kind of a story that came out at some point, which ended up being a speed run that the game was like 5 hours.
Wow.
And 5 hours and change. Now, according to some other people, they've taken longer to actually finish, around the 8-hour range.
Sure.
Some people even taking up to 10 hours, such. But let me ask you, looking at a lot of the stuff and seeing the review for the order, how do you feel about that, or does that get you any more enticed of picking this up on PlayStation 4?
Well, I mean, when you look at the review and then you also look a little bit into the gameplay, I'm actually okay with the fact that they gave it a 6.5. I understand where he's coming from. First of all, the video game looks fantastic in my opinion.
It looks polished.
I think it looks great, right? I think it looks a lot better than some of the other games that have launched on PS4, but I feel that's only because it's very linear, so they keep you locked to what you have to see, right? So they're going to polish those areas up to make them look great, instead of releasing a huge world like Skyrim, right? You got more real estate to deal with, so that's more polished, which is gonna take more time, to polish up.
Yeah.
But I mean, when it comes to game length, I'm okay with it being super short. I'm that type of person that actually played Metal Gear Solid. What was the
4?
Nah, it was the
Peace Walker?
It was one for Xbox One and PS4 that just came.
Oh, Ground Zeroes.
Okay, so Ground Zeroes had a big old stink that it was 2 hours long. I put 10 hours into that video game.
Because there's more to do than just the main campaign.
Exactly,
I know,
because there's so much more things that you can do, and plus the video game was fun. Now, granted, there was no multiplayer; it was just single player. The order is in the same boat. But I'm that guy who's always under a time constraint, right? I only got an X amount of time to play video games.
Yeah.
So I like the idea that it's short. I don't like the idea that the video game is $60. I think could totally have sold it for $39 to $49. But I mean, everybody's going to have their own opinions. I was talking to other people just last night who've played the video game and completed it, and they want to go back and play it. They were saying it was engaging, it was fun. The QTE had a little bit of riff-raff problems here and there, but I mean, I think the video game looks fun. It's something I'm probably going to want to pick up, but I'm not going to pick it up until it's $39 or maybe even $40, $45 or so.
Well, here's how I'm approaching it, because I have a couple friends of mine that actually did the review for their respective outlets of the Order 1886. Some people liked it, some people did not. Some people felt that, obviously there was way too much QTE, which was a big thing when the playthrough about it came out, which some people felt it was more fluff and that, different things could have been done a little bit better in relation to its formula and such, which is fine. I think it's a valid argument. I think, as far as length of games, I think we've even touched about this, on the podcast at some point very briefly, that, as long as the experience is fun and I feel satisfied going into the game and coming out of it, I think that's what really should matter. Right. And Ground Zeroes really is a good example of that, because everybody was up in arms about Ground Zeroes being 2.5 hours at one point that you could complete it in. But if you really take the time to explore the worlds, or just play the game how you actually want to play it and actually, explore what's coming at you on screen and such, rather than either trying to just speed run through it or just try to see, put too much emphasis on how much time in relation to your dollar that you spend on it, you're never really going to enjoy the game. Right. And I feel like, each game you just have to go in. This is the way how I kind of approach reviews. You go into the game, taking in what the game gives to you.
Right.
Now, during the course of that time, which I believe a couple of different reviews for the Order actually said, when you're in the experience and it's something that you feel is not enjoyable and it drags on and such, obviously that's an issue, and you make an argument that longer games could be a real bad thing for some titles. Oh, yeah. But I think it's different. But I think it's different for every game, because again, you have those games like Rogue Legacy or Shovel Knight that are super short. You could complete those games in less than an hour. And it's still fantastic in what could be done. Granted, those are speed runs again. It all depends about different players and different people and different experiences. Dealing with each individual title and such. Now, one thing I will say though, I feel that the reactions to the Order were a little bit overblown. I think it was much more overblown and kind of a little ridiculous compared to what the reactions that we saw from Majora's Mask not too long ago, if you remember. Yeah. I mean, there was even one idiot out there that compared what the Order was experiencing to racism, which I was like, wow. What are you talking about, bro? It was really out there. But my point is, some of these reactions to a review or just like the reviews to some of the games, and then people trying to throw Ready at Dawn underneath the bus, for really kind of like, making a short game and stuff is like, maybe that's a little uncalled for.
Right.
But I feel that it's more the reactions of the people, really the consumers, the people that are picking up the games, the Let's Players and stuff, that are really giving it kind of like, the bad vibe or the bad aura around it, as opposed to the guys that are reviewing the game, actually playing the game and giving their honest opinions about it.
Yeah, people are going to speak their minds on the internet, and most of the times it's not even critical onto what the game is actually offering. When you and I are reviewing video games, we're critiquing it. You're, like you said, what the game is bringing to the table.
It's our honest opinion.
Exactly. So I mean, everyone's going to be very opinionated with anything. Really, that's just the reality that we live in now. But I just feel when it comes down to video games, it really revolves around an individual's personal opinion, and then if you're undecided, then that's when you go and check out reviews and see what other people thought, and then that may reflect on if you buy the video game or you don't. But
agreed.
But I do have a question for you though, because
what's up?
The Order has a lot of QTE, just like you said, and just like how you can see on IGN, you can watch the video review. But QTE's been going on; it's been a thing for a while, right? We've seen
since PS2 era.
We've seen it in Star Wars: The Force Unleashed. That's kind of where I got
God of War.
God of War, exactly. Now we're starting to see it in The Walking Dead and The Wolf Among Us, and those video games are bite-sized. I would say I haven't finished The Walking Dead, but I would assume it's about maybe a 5 to 6 hour run when you add all.
Give or take. I played the first season.
Okay.
I played the first season. It's roughly kind of like that, but again, it depends on what your decisions are.
But see, the thing is too is those video games, in my opinion, are also linear to an extent.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, with The Order, comparing The Order with The Walking Dead, I mean, do you feel it really just boils down to story? Because they're both very linear and they both have, really cliche, they have basically similar actions when it comes to QTE. Like, they're not very engaging. They're just there to be there.
In all honesty, I don't think it really comes down to story. I think it really comes to how you present such events to the player. Because if you go back to any of the earlier God of War games, even the ones that Ready at Dawn did on the portables and such, and you look at how the QTEs are done in comparison to what's done in The Order, or even what's done in something like Star Wars: The Force Unleashed and stuff, look at how different and how people were okay with those QTEs. Because God of War has a lot of QTEs.
Oh, yeah.
Don't get it twisted, because just because it's a boss fight and stuff, you have a lot of QTEs during the combat of God of War. So pretty much throughout that whole game is a ton of quick time events. But the delivery, I feel, is where it's really at, because during the time of God of War, let's say you're fighting a boss and there's this crazy amount of stuff happening on screen in relation to what Kratos is doing, as well as also during the combat, during smaller enemies and stuff, all these crazy amount of hordes of bad guys coming at you. That's one thing. A lot of people give it some flack, in The Order, or even in some other third person type of action games where maybe it's not as exciting, or maybe because it's overbearingly thrown in your face, because I haven't played The Order yet. At one point. But, if you're thrown so many at a time, successively, one after another, and especially if it's, the same actions, or, very mundane actions that really kind of, are just there just to be there, then I could see why people have a problem with it, and why a lot of the reviewers were making comments on it and saying, there's way too many of this that, that are there. That I could totally understand. And I really, as far as story, really, I don't think QTEs really could kind of, are dependent on the narrative that's going on. I think that, narrative, it's already predetermined and such, and I think, maybe during the planning phases of some of the games when they're developed, they're actually, picking out certain sections after, most of the games already being worked on. Okay, how can we really, instead of just flat out giving a cinematic and such, how can we tell this story to the player while still giving them some element of control? And that's really where it all boils down to. We're trying to give the player some element of control of what's happening on screen. Now, with the games like The Walking Dead and even The Wolf Among Us, to an extent, that changes the narrative. That's really, that's cute. I guess you could say QTEs are the element of choice really well done, because depending on what happens, whether you pass or fail, or even if you decide to do one thing or another, the story changes. And that's what really is the appeal of that, especially in those type of games. With the Order, I don't see that, or at least from my understanding, that isn't done like that. It's more so okay, you have to do something, here and there, as opposed to either kill an enemy or just move an object or get from one spot to the next, and it's just constantly coming at you.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, the order is I guess when it really comes down to is, just playing it. That way we can find out if it's worth buying for us.
I mean, I've seen some videos, and from what I gather, it's exactly what I said. But some of the people have told me it's kind of like that. At least the people that have really taken issue with with most of the game.
I just kind of wish that you can interact more with the environment, right? Because that's something that. What's his name? Let me look at it. Brandon Tyrell from IGN. He had mentioned that it's unfortunate that you can't interact with the environment. It looks humongous when you're walking down an alley, but you can't touch anything. I feel like that's unfortunate because it kind of takes away from just the atmosphere. The atmosphere itself. I believe it's set in London. Very gothic scene. You can't talk to anybody. You can't.
That steampunk setting, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, the fact that it's linear as well, it kind of.
But here's the thing, though. God of War, the games that Ready at Dawn worked on and such, were very similar like that. That they were very linear. And I think that, again, it all comes down to presentation to some of the stuff like that. Because God of War, granted, some of the environments in the God of War games are very dull and such, but really the appeal of that is that all the action that's happening with all the enemies coming at you, the type of moves you're doing to kill your enemies, or the puzzles that you're trying to solve. Yeah, that's really, again, it's all that presentation.
I mean, it's funny that you bring up action, and we can just talk about this briefly because we've been going on for a little bit. But Brandon was saying in his review that the action was, he could relate that to being in a traffic jam, right? It's action packed for a second. You're in a fight, and then it stops. Cinematic action stops. Cinematic. It's like. Do you think those experiences kind of take away from the enjoyment of the video game because you're the constant stopping and going instead of having
here's
like
the
a
thing.
flow?
Well, here's the thing, and you bring up the term flow. It's you don't want to make the player feel like they're not in control. That's why a lot of games like Mass Effect, like The Walking Dead, like The Wolf Among Us, Back to the Future, a lot of the Telltale games, and a lot of the games that are like RPGs and such that give you a lot more control over the narrative and such. It's all about this sense of control to the player. You don't want the player to sit down there and actually, like in Metal Gear Solid 4, like one of the biggest things that came out about it from other developers was that, a lot of players, especially now these days, lose their attention or get a little bit bored when you take control out of their hands for more than like a couple minutes, like that. And I feel like when you're constantly stopping, here or there to watch a cutscene, do a little bit of action, watch a cutscene, do a little bit of action, that kind of gets on players' nerves. I could totally understand that. That's why a lot of games, and I feel the ones that do a little bit better, are the ones that have in-game cutscenes, where you're controlling the character, and maybe you're hearing dialogue, or you're waiting for something to happen while the game loads up and such. That's maybe, kind of like a better approach or one way to kind of get around that issue. Such, but it really comes down to control. Like, just never let the player feel like they have to put the controller down for like 30 minutes. Never let them feel like that.
So before playing it, how would you go into it then? I'm optimistic. I'm cautiously optimistic, but I'm still willing to play this video game. Are you?
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
Me too. I'm willing to play it. I would rather just go in, outside of everything else of what everybody's told me and what the reviews I've read and such. I'd rather just go in and just play it for what it is. Because again, I've had hands-on time with the order.
Right.
I played a demo of it, and I get the the general idea of like the third-person shooting and such. But as far as like now getting a real sense of the narrative, from beginning to end, and seeing the final product, I would just wipe myself clean, my slate clean, and just see what it gives to me, and then go from there.
Yeah.
And I hope that's what a lot of reviewers did. From my understanding, it seems like if they're all coming out like very similar ideas or bringing up different points, that I'm hoping that they approached it in a similar fashion. But that being said, yeah, the order 6.5 and IGN apparently it's experiencing critique racism on the internet, so it's kind of crazy. But yeah, some other news: a new Rock Band might be coming to Xbox One and PS4.
That was interesting.
Now, that's very interesting because you would expect, or you didn't expect to hear anything about Rock Band or any sort of like music game like this. But apparently, according to Bloomberg Business, okay, in a story by Brian Albert over on IGN.com, Harmonix is developing a new Rock Band game for the Xbox One and the PS4. Okay, now there is a quote from Harmonix that he goes to say that we're excited by how enthusiastic our fans have been in regards to our most recent DLC releases, and we think that it's awesome people are speculating about the future of the franchise. While we still don't have anything to announce, hundreds of thousands of unique users are still actively playing Rock Band games each month. This passion our fans have shown for Rock Band over the years suggests that Rock truly hasn't died. And we've always been clear that we love to return to the franchise when the time is right. Now, the real question is the time right? So, what do you think, Pete?
I think
is it time?
I think it's time. I think there's been.
It's not that time. It's not about that time.
It's not about that.
It's not about that time. But is it time? That was too easy.
That was a good one. No, I think there's been a really long gap when it comes to music video games, right? Like, I remember playing the crap out of Guitar Hero. I tried Rock Band. Rock Band was kind of like, it was kind of like that whole Tony Hawk and Skate, vibe, right? So you went to Rock Band for the nice visuals, along with like the different song selection, and then you went to Guitar Hero for another diverse selection of music. But man, I want to be able to jam on my Xbox One, like in 1080p.
In HD.
Yeah, exactly. HD, I want to stream it, like just kind of think of the endless possibilities.
You know what I think it is, too? I just thought of something now that you mentioned that. Streaming. That could cause a lot of problems, especially with copyright. Streaming on Twitch and stuff with the licensed songs. That could be a real problem. And I bet you if there is a new Rock Band that gets made by them, or any sort of like music game, it won't have the ability to stream on Twitch. On any of the consoles. Because that's a licensing nightmare if you think about it.
Yeah, but what's stopping people from streaming today, on what's to stop somebody from buying a copy of Rock Band 2 on Xbox 360 and then streaming that on Twitch? Like,
it happens. I've heard stories that, like, not necessarily Guitar Hero or Rock Band, but I've heard different stories on people that have tried to stream those games on Twitch and getting either their videos muted or getting copyright strikes.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
And as silly as that sounds, I could definitely see that being a thing.
Yeah, I don't know.
And I bet you if that does happen, and that's the case, everybody will complain about it.
Oh, of course they will. I mean, that kind of defeats the purpose of releasing this video game then. So, before they release it, I'm pretty positive they've already thought about, copyright issues and whatnot. But it'd be nice, man, to play another music video game. It's really an awesome video game to play when you're having parties or you're trying to entertain friends when they come over. And rock out. Like, I remember a really long time ago there was a rumor that it was supposed to be like a guitar or Rock Band, like Chili Peppers or something like that. Like, just seeing stuff like that. Like, I just want to play video games with instruments again. Like, that's a good time in itself. So I think that's
great. There's plenty of music to pull from. There's tracks that in all the Guitar Hero and Rock Band games I would have loved to see like show up on there that haven't been included like in DLC and stuff. So I mean, it's been a while. It's been a while since we had another Rock Band. Hopefully they pursue this. This will be interesting to see if it comes out at E3 that they're actually going to reveal like a tease or something for it. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, did you ever get into the Rock Band video games or Guitar
Yes,
Hero?
I did. For Guitar Hero specifically, I competed in contests back in New York years ago for Guitar Hero 2 and 3. Nice. And, then when that came to an end, I used to play a lot, with my friends in college, or I used to get together at, parties and play Rock Band. It's always fun to whip out the controller, the drums and stuff together and get, a couple songs playing. It's always a great party game.
Right.
So, it's fun.
Yeah,
I could definitely see
You can't go wrong with having a few drinks and playing Rock Band and making a fool out of yourself.
Oh, yeah. And then if you're playing, Coheed Cambria or through Dragon Force, Through the Fire and the Flames, or even some Ozzy Osbourne, it gets people going. It's pretty good. But, yeah. So, it's not about that time, though, maybe, possibly, for Rock Band. But, you know what it might be time for? It might be time for some Spawn in Mortal Kombat X. Some Mortal Kombat X news. Now, this is cool because this got actually broken by a friend of mine over at GamerFin Nation, Antoine, that he had an interview with Ed Boon, a video interview. And apparently, through some of the lingo and some of the PR talk, and dare I say the bold, talk from Ed Boon, there's a very strong possibility that Spawn might be coming to Mortal Kombat X as a playable character. In addition to that, in a separate story, okay, there's a rumor going around that Predator, the Predator alien from the Predator franchise might be playable in Mortal Kombat X. Now, this is pretty cool because you brought up a good point to me before recording the podcast. What if they split it up between the two versions of the game on Xbox One and PlayStation 4? Each console gets a unique exclusive character, a la a la Soul Calibur,
Right.
that it was back done before. This is pretty cool, but Spawn, in Mortal Kombat X, yay or nay?
I think that's cool, man. He's got those chains, like he can, like, doesn't he use them as like whips, kind of, like?
He's a dark character that kills people, so
well,
yeah.
He'd fit right in with Mortal Kombat. But I figured Spawn would be more of a PlayStation character, considering he's dark. He's got that red cape kind of thing going on, and when you just like how you said Star Wars, Darth Vader had black armor with a red cape or whatever, or well, he's got a black cape, sorry, but still he's like a dark character. And Predator is green and Yoda was green, and that's kind of what I'm going off of. But
now, to interject one thought to bring it up before you continue, Spawn was on the Xbox version of Soul Calibur 2. Mm-hmm. Okay, which that has some ties to Microsoft back in the day, so maybe you might see him go to the Xbox One, if that's the case.
That's a good point, actually, now that you bring it up. I completely forgot about that. Yeah, that was way back on the original Xbox.
Yeah, that was a big deal, I remember. Mm-hmm. A huge deal when you got to play as Spawn. And then on the other consoles, you had Link on the GameCube, and you had Heihachi for the PlayStation 2, because of Tekken and stuff, even though it was done by Namco. Mm-hmm. But even so, even if it's not a console exclusive and it's multi-platform, because obviously, besides playing as Spawn, people would love to play as the Predator, because that just sounds cool. Mm-hmm. Being able to kill people as the Predator, that's awesome. I really hope it's just multi-platform, that it's just DLC, and then give us like that complete edition, like what they did with the last Mortal Kombat, where I can have both. That'd be sweet.
Yeah, I mean, like, what do you think about having like Warner Brothers properties in Mortal Kombat, right? Like, so the last Mortal Kombat, I believe, Freddy
Krueger.
Yeah, he was in there. So it's kind of like they're, instead of bringing back old nostalgic characters from past iterations of Mortal Kombat, they're bringing in Warner Brothers properties into the video game. I mean, how do you feel? I mean, are you a big Mortal Kombat fan? And then, like, how do you feel about them bringing movie characters instead of concrete series characters into the video
game? Number one, I'm an ecstatic Mortal Kombat fan for many years, like many people. I think, the Warner Brothers stuff comes from the fact that they've done, not only they're under the umbrella and NetherRealm Studios of Warner Brothers Studios, the game studios that does all their games and stuff, especially, Mortal Kombat, but also keep in mind Injustice happened not too long ago. Right. That's a big, DC characters under the Warner Brothers umbrella. I wouldn't be surprised, it's kind of funny because I don't think we're going to see like DC characters show up in the Mortal Kombat games, even though we had Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe, and a lot of people really got rubbed the wrong way about that. I really wish that they could take another crack at that and probably do it a little bit differently.
They will. I think it was
in
like
the same vein.
I think it was just a way to kind of get the ball rolling in the directions that they wanted to get into. But
yeah. But I mean, I'm trying to think now what other type of Warner Brothers properties they could pull from to put in games like this, or even to appear in Injustice. Because remember, we had Scorpion show up in Injustice, and he had like a total redesign that looked amazing. Granted, he wasn't killing anybody with fatalities and stuff. It was just cool to have him in there. It was handled right. So I would definitely want to see something like that done in the same vein for the Mortal Kombat universe. But like, what other type of like Warner Brothers movies or properties you can think of?
Is Jason a Warner Brothers property?
There was some talk about that for a while because Freddy Krueger showed up in Mortal Kombat 9, and I wouldn't be surprised on maybe getting another horror-esque type of like character to show up in Mortal Kombat. Again, Spawn, being somewhat horror like that, but I don't know. I don't know about Jason. I mean, it'd be pretty cool.
I mean, yeah, he'd be a perfect fit just because he has that like machete that he takes people out with, and then just having that is enough because there's going to be very gruesome like fatalities, and then just him having that as like a weapon, I think automatically makes him available to be in.
I mean, there was even talk at one point of maybe some of the Looney Tunes characters showing up, but I doubt that. I mean, it sounds weird. I know it sounds really weird, but this was a thing back then, like before Mortal Kombat 9 came out, that somebody said like Bugs Bunny was going to show up as a playable character. I was like, what? No, like that doesn't make sense. I mean, it sounds like it'd be funny as like a little cameo. Here and there, like a little short, like video
cameo,
or something.
Yeah, I totally get that. Cameo, yeah, he's not doing anything.
Because cameo could be anything.
Exactly, he could just be chewing on a carrot and just chilling, sitting back. That I can see, but not as like a playable character, because then that would like totally bash who he is as a character. I mean, you gotta think like kids watch this character.
I mean,
they know who.
I mean, now I'm looking at the Warner Brothers like horror movies of like different stuff. And Nightmare on Elm Street obviously is a prominent thing in Warner Brothers and such, but also the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh, see, there you go.
Annabelle, Gremlins, Beetlejuice. That'd be fun. You know something? Beetlejuice would be kind of funny because NetherRealm has a really good sense of humor. I would love to see Beetlejuice just show up and either as a playable character, to do different like kooky, crazy fatalities, because you could have a lot of fun with that.
Oh yeah, dude, for sure.
I think that'd be great. That'd be pretty interesting. But they could go anywhere with this. I mean, I'm looking at it now. They have a whole series or a whole grouping of different horror movies. I mean, even the guy from Trick or Treat, which was a big thing at Comic-Con the year I went. The Trick or Treat guy. But still, who knows at this point? I'm just saying, though, cameo of Looney Tunes, that would be funny. That'd be real, real funny. But, moving away from Mortal Kombat X, speaking of other superhero news, let's talk about the Justice League. Let's talk about Zack Snyder and the recent reveal of Jason Momoa as the King of the Seas, Aquaman. Now, did you get a chance to see this picture?
I've seen the picture, and I've also seen the people on Twitter who have been making fun of this picture, but I'm not too...
I don't see why. I really don't see why. It looks awesome.
I mean, I'm not too savvy when it comes to Aquaman. Like, I know what he has been depicted as, being like basically the reject of the superheroes, how everybody makes fun of Aquaman. But the picture shown on IGN makes him look like a badass.
Oh yeah,
he's not messing around. And
I will tell you one thing: I've noticed a trend over the last couple of years, especially with a lot of the DC animated stuff coming out, that Warner Brothers and DC are really trying to put Aquaman back in the spotlight as a good character to want to like. Especially with his appearance in Injustice, I think that was a great interpretation of Aquaman, because he did not look like a wuss, and he wasn't like made as a joke like what a lot of people give him crap for in the comics, especially reading those. And I look at Jason Momoa; he looks awesome. Yeah. As Aquaman. Like, apparently he's a tall dude. It's the same. In case you guys didn't know, Jason Momoa is one of the characters from Game of Thrones that gets to hang out with Khaleesi, especially in the beginning of the series. And he looks amazing as Aquaman right now. If you haven't seen the picture, go on Twitter or go on Google or go to IGN and look at the story of this picture where it shows him with his Atlantean armor, which looks very reminiscent of the classic, interpretations of Aquaman from the comics, and even some stuff from the New 52. You got the classic A, for those that have read the comics, a little Aquaman A on the belt. That doesn't really look like an A. It looks like it's just a little arch and such, but you could interpret it as that way, because in the past, it's had that little A, like little slide on the bottom of it to make it look like a letter of the alphabet. But this one looks crazy. I mean, he's got the trident. That looks good. Now, a big question that a lot of people have been proposing is that whether or not he's actually going to get his hand cut off in order to have the little hook as part of like his hands and such, which I hope to God not, because he just looks awesome with the trident in hand like this. He looks like King of the Seven Seas, which, by the way, kind of ties into this marketing thing, which I think is genius. They have on the picture, it says Unite the Seven. Now, there's 7 seas in the kingdom, for Atlantis in the world and such, but also there are 7 members of the Justice League. Now, I really want to see Warner Brothers make this ball keep rolling with this, because this could imply many different things. This could imply, one, we're getting the reveal of the Justice League members, with all their solo movies and stuff. The next one people are saying now, besides Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, that might get revealed is the Flash, which he's already been cast. Same thing with Victor Stone. If not later on, the Martian Manhunter. There's a lot of things to be interpreted from this. If Warner Brothers, please God, if you could do this right and not drop the ball in the layup that which you're being given, this could be an amazing marketing campaign for when we finally get the Justice League movie, because this looks cool. This looks like they're already doing it right. Oh, yeah, like they're going in the right direction.
It's the perfect setup for a Justice League movie, right? Just like how Marvel had the Avengers, like those movies came out individually and then they launched the Avengers film. This time, like, Aquaman's doing his thing. Batman vs. Superman's going to be coming out, I think it's like next year.
No, I think it's this year.
So it's coming out soon, but, they're very slowly integrating these, or they're having these films come out little by little, and then I just pray to God that a Justice League film comes out, because I don't know if this is true or not, but is Wonder Woman supposed to make a cameo in
Wonder Woman is part of the story in Batman vs. Superman. Like, basically, you're going to have the Trinity revealed in Batman vs. Superman, which is Wonder Woman, Batman, and Superman. Okay, the Man of Steel sequel. Now, also in the midst of all that, Aquaman himself, Jason Momoa, as well as also Victor Stone, is going to make appearances, and possibly other Justice League members in some form or fashion are going to appear in this movie. Now, that was like the bane of a lot of people's news, because then at this point it's turning into a Justice League movie. But from what I'm seeing and from some of the stuff I'm hearing about Batman vs. Superman, there seems to be something good, being made in the mix. Now, that's all based off aesthetics. Now, the movie itself, the story could absolutely suck.
Right.
It could be horrible. Right. There's always that possibility. But I'm liking the promotional material from what I'm seeing. I wonder if Jason Momoa is going to appear like this in Batman vs. Superman. Because here's the thing.
Makes sense.
It's not clear if we're actually seeing a promotion for Batman v Superman, or are we seeing a promotion for the Aquaman solo movie? That's interesting. And Zack Snyder doesn't tell us. And we're not getting any comment from Warner Brothers. Right. We'll know hopefully soon when that first trailer drops for that movie. Is going to be a big deal.
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now.
Yeah.
It's going to be very big.
Yeah, I definitely see it as Aquaman having his own movie, and that's to kind of build up the hype for this individual character. And then maybe in another 2 or 3 years, we'll see that, Justice League film.
They have a layout for the Justice League film. And we already know all these characters are getting their own movies, because they actually, kind of like when Marvel did not too long ago, they have a layout of all the films for over the next, leading into 2019 or 2020, I believe. Something like that. So we know they're coming, and they have all the dates and stuff. But this actual teaser, specifically, I think obviously since it's so soon now, this is probably a teaser for him being in Batman v Superman.
You think so?
Personally. I really think so, because if the Aquaman movie is so far out, I mean really far out, like more than 2 years out, why are we getting this teaser now, unless this is how he's going to appear in Batman vs. Superman?
That's a good point, actually.
And I think the marketing is so good as a setup, because imagine getting these reveals and then we finally get all these promo pics of every single Justice League member.
Right. Yeah.
It's just too good. It's too good.
That'd be a good setup, man. Jeez, now this makes me want to go and see that Batman.
Mind blown! Mind blown. But yeah, it's going to be exciting. I think Comic-Con is really going to be exciting this year. San Diego Comic-Con?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
This is going to be sweet.
For sure.
Now, getting away from some superhero stuff, now we got to talk about some bad news. Okay, no, before we get into the bad news, there's one little thing that I kind of skipped over that I want to talk about. I want to talk about this Namco Bandai actual teaser, which is real quick. We'll quickly touch upon it because we got a better topic coming up next. There's a teaser being put out there by Namco Bandai for some people are saying is either a new game or is a new teaser for the new Godzilla game coming out. Now, the actual teaser references, for your kaiju fans out there, Ray Gigant, which is a big kind of nod for some people for Ultraman. Ultraman being one of those big classic kaiju superheroes that fights giant monsters and stuff. Now, P, I know you're not big into kaiju. You're not super into Godzilla, as far as like the Godzilla game that's coming out and such. But does this mean anything to you? Does it get you excited?
It's interesting. Like you were saying, I'm not really big on Godzilla. Now I've seen, a film or two, but I didn't really follow the franchise and play the video games. But the trailer that's on IGN that you guys can check out, it looked kind of interesting. It looked intriguing. It reminds me of those games like we were talking before the podcast, like Rampage.
Yeah.
Those games we would play in the arcades and on
Definitely.
home consoles and stuff like that. And it looks like you're playing as Godzilla. You're destroying helicopters and buildings and being very destructive. So. That it looks kind of fun, but I guess I kind of have to see a little bit more just to kind of hook me into playing the video game, or even like hook me into seeking out the movies in past video games.
Definitely. I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I wanted a new Godzilla game. It looks cool to me. The footage I've seen.
Into it, right?
Yeah, I'm into Godzilla. I mean, I've liked, some of the last couple games to come out that were like the fighting games were really where it was at, because we had a chance to be Godzilla or be any one of the monsters and fight each other. This one's taking a much more classical approach where you're playing as Godzilla and you're still fighting the other like big kaiju monsters that are part of his franchise, but you're also, there's a big element, that's part of destroying the environment and fighting the military and being pretty much the natural disaster that Godzilla really is. So that's interesting to me.
I mean,
it's neat.
What's like the end? What's the end of the game like? I mean, you destroy everything and you win, and that's it. Like, is that basically what Godzilla video games are? Like,
no. I mean, there's a combination of different ones. You got your classic NES and Super NES titles where basically they're like strategy games almost, but they have elements of fighting between the monsters. And the ones that are really good, the ones that were on PS2 and Xbox, the original Xbox, were like, like a more fighting / Power Stone like type of game, where you could choose any number of like, characters from the series, even multiple Godzillas from multiple movies, like, Godzilla 89 or 85, Godzilla 2000 or classic Godzilla, and then choose like Ultraman, choose Jet Jaguar or, King Ghidorah, any one of these giant monsters. And that was pretty cool because it ended up being like a real nod to the franchise overall, like throughout the years. So I hope this one has that same vein as far as, pulling from different eras of Godzilla, including apparently the new Godzilla that was done here in America is supposed to make an appearance in this game, which I think is pretty cool. But having this kind of a gameplay where you're still able to fight and such, different monsters, but still be fun and pull from the different eras, I hope that's the case. So it'd be awesome. Now, there's some bad news that we're going to get into now. Let's talk about some bad news. Okay, the bad news is that the Phantom Dust game, the reboot, has been canceled, which is kind of sad. Okay, but even more sad is the fact that not too long afterwards, the studio that actually was behind it, that was making it, got shut down, and there was layoffs, and it was a big deal. That really sucks. Like, I know there's a lot of layoffs and such here and there about the industry that they happen. There's been a lot happening here and there over the last couple of months, I will say, but it's always terrible to hear stories like this, where people lose their jobs and stuff. Right. But there seems to be a real big, resurgence of that, over the last couple of months, where you're hearing a lot of studios closing down, a lot of layoffs here and there. And this news ties directly into our main topic for today, which is, studio layoffs and project cancellations and shutdowns in the industry. It's always sad to hear that. Now, what Phantom does, it makes it even more sour because the game was announced at E3. It was a big deal for a lot of classic Xbox fans. They've been around with the ecosystem for a while. It was a reboot of a classic Xbox original title, and shortly after the game gets canceled, then the studio gets disbanded. And it's like, wow, that's really terrible.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of makes you wonder. Like we've seen the trailer last year at E3, I believe, and it was very well received in regards to audience reaction. But it's unfortunate to hear that the studio is closing down, and like I was going to say, it kind of makes you think, like, do you think Microsoft, Phil Spencer was just like, these guys aren't really cutting it, maybe they didn't meet a deadline, or maybe they're kind of falling behind a little bit, so we're just going to pull the plug at least on this development studio and maybe kind of salvage what's there and dish it out to another development studio. So I mean, it kind of sucks to hear people lose their jobs. I mean, it's unfortunate. They have families they have to support, but if you got to think of what's in the best interest of Microsoft, which I'm sure Phil Spencer is doing for sure. He wants the best for his supporters, and he's going to have to do what he has to do to ensure that gets done.
I mean, this was a big enough deal, and you're totally right. I'm pretty sure, one of the things I remember Phil Spencer commenting on a while back, during the time of E3 was that, we wanted to go get something that, for classic Microsoft fans that have been with us for a while, that's something that could diversify our catalog of games for the Xbox One. And just seeing this, that as big a deal as that was back then, and seeing that trailer, because I remember being in that room, seeing that trailer during the press conference, and how, like, it got, there was a lot of confused people, but there was, like, a lot of big fans, like, cheering for joy for seeing, like, an IP that they haven't seen in a while, like, come back, and they just totally dropping it like a bad habit now. That, like I said, it leaves a bad aftertaste, in everybody's mouths, and it feels like, what went wrong with that studio, or what went wrong specifically, with the game.
Yeah, I mean, I've never played this video game before, but from what I hear, it's a card-based video game. And I was listening to Game Scoop yesterday, and the guys were saying, maybe the developers who work on the Magic the Gathering franchise video games, maybe they can pick this up. But to my understanding, the last Magic of the Gathering video game didn't really perform very well. I mean, granted, I think they fixed it, but initially it didn't turn out very well. But I mean, when they announced this video game, I had no idea what it was. Right? Like, he's like, "Oh, we're gonna return to an old franchise." I got super excited, and then I was like, "Well, what the hell is this? I've never seen this before." So I'm in that demographic of gamers who don't know what this video game is, and honestly, like I said, it sucks that people got laid off, but the fact that this video game is in limbo, I really don't care.
Now, here's the crazy thing, because I was looking through a couple stories, earlier and now, is that the actual news and the actual info about this is a little bit confusing, because the developer's done. Behind Phantom Dust, the reboot, okay, pretty much is gone for the most part, is shut down. But at the same time, Microsoft says that they made a statement that they're still working on the game for the Xbox One. Now, we haven't heard anything really since the news came out about it, other than what's been stated for or whatnot. But I mean, who else are they gonna get to work on this game, or what other studio they're gonna go to for all the stuff that Darkside had done at that point? But at the same time, maybe will this game change from what its initial vision was, or maybe it'll turn out worse than what was intended for it.
Yeah.
At some point, because this happens constantly in the industry,
Right.
where one studio will work on a game, they'll stop working on it because either they can't reach a certain agreement on certain stuff, and they'll sever ties with the studio. And then it'll go to another developer, and then it'll totally change up the game from what it could have been. Perfect example, the most infamous example of this, Duke Nukem Forever. Duke Nukem Forever went through 3 or 4 studios, I believe it was. That, and that game changed so many times, up to the point where we got it to Gearbox, and it ended up being the pile of crap that it was.
Right.
What do you think is going to happen with this?
I don't know. I think it's going to stay basically in limbo. Until someone can pick up the slack. I really, like I said, I really don't know too much about this video game. Perhaps I should have at least dug a little deeper before I started recording, but I don't know. I feel like Microsoft isn't going to pick somebody that they feel isn't competent, right? Someone that can't handle the job. So maybe for right now, not necessarily pulling the plug on the operation, more like putting it into remission for right now is the best decision, because
putting in the limbo,
right? Like, putting them there is the best decision as of right now, because there's nothing worse than launching a video game that's not finished, or at least doesn't meet the expectations of the gamers who have played the past version of it. So it's a good decision when you look at it from a business perspective. But I mean, I don't know. I kind of just I couldn't tell you who's going to be another developer that would own up to it and take the reins and steer in the direction that Phil Spencer wants it to go.
Who knows? But getting back now to the idea of closures of studios and just, layoffs in the industry and such, like I said, it's always bad to hear about that. And do you really think that really, as far as outside of the business aspects of everything, monetary-wise, do you really think it's a necessity in the industry to have such a grim thing happen on a regular basis here in the games industry for different studios, or just for the medium to kind of advance and such?
No, well, it sometimes it's a necessary evil, and then sometimes good things come from it. Just like how some of the people left Rare to go and work on Project Ukulele, and how that kind of sparks interest for individuals like us who've played Banjo-Kazooie and Donkey Kong Country and stuff like that. So, it's necessary for people to leave, and sometimes it's necessary for them to get canned, because that opens up opportunities for different studios and different projects, and that in itself may lead to bigger and better things. So it's unfortunate, like you're saying, that it happens, but sometimes it has to happen, and there's nothing really us as gamers can do about it, really.
True. Yeah, I mean, it's a business thing, really. It's, in my opinion, I think it is a necessity because one thing that people tend to forget, as consumers and as gamers in general, is that the entire industry is a business. Mm-hmm. These companies are businesses that want to make money, mm-hmm. and they want to the only way for them to do so and to keep giving us games that we love is that they have to thrive. They have to, be profitable and such. And really, the best way to kind of get the message across to different people or different companies, whether you're unhappy or happy or whatnot, is to vote with your wallets. Like right. Mr. Colin Moriarty is always saying, podcast Beyond Alumni, vote with your wallets. Say, you could make a big clear statement to a company by either buying a game or not buying a game. Right. And unfortunately, sometimes, no matter which way you go, it still ends up being, a studio will get disbanded mm-hmm. or people will lose their jobs. I mean, look what happened not too long ago with Sony. That was a big thing over at Sony Santa Monica. Mm-hmm. That, the guys that helped create God of War. That was a big deal. And a lot of talented guys over there that were working even on a new IP. One of the veterans, I forgot his name at the moment, I apologize, but one of the big veterans that worked with the God of War franchise ever since the beginning alongside David Jaffe, he ended up losing his job, getting laid off, and leaving Sony Santa Monica. That kind of sucks like that, but it happens, and it's a harsh reality for everything that's going on in the industry.
Yep.
Definitely something to be noteworthy with. But let's kind of wash away all this grim talk of people losing their jobs, bad games, bad reactions to games, and cancellations and stuff. Let's give something away, Pete.
Yeah.
Let's give a Game Boy.
Yeah.
Okay, that always cheers people up, and our good friends, that listen to the podcast, every once in a while we decide to give a game away here and there as a neat little surprise. Sometimes we'll tell you, sometimes we won't. Sometimes we'll give something away that gives you a contest. Sometimes we'll just throw it at you. Okay, this one we're going to throw it at them. It's going to be kind of random, but I'm going to give away a copy of Final Fantasy X-2 HD Remaster on the PS Vita. Now, granted, some of you Final Fantasy fans have your opinions about this, but hey, we're giving you away free games. Am I right?
Uh-huh.
All right, so I'm going to read off the code now for Final Fantasy X-2 HD Remaster for the PS Vita. Please let us know, guys, if you get this actual code. Send us a tweet, send us an actual picture or whatnot to let us know that you got the game. But the code for the game is as follows. I'm only going to say it once now. You better be listening. You better be right next to your speakers, not blasting it, hopefully, because you'll go deaf like that. But here we go. Okay? The code is FNHEJ6NE26L2. Okay, and there you go. That's your code for Final Fantasy X-2 HD Remaster on the PlayStation Vita. We're not going to say it again because it's going to give people a chance, hopefully, to actually get the game and everything. And like I said, send us an email, send us a tweet at AllStarPod on Twitter or at AllStarPod on Hotmail.com to let us know if you guys actually picked up the game. Now, we didn't get really a lot of listener mail this week. We got one. Okay, I'm pulling up right now. So I really encourage you guys to actually write into the podcast. Let us know some of your questions. Again, at allstarpod at hotmail.com or send us a tweet over at allstarpod on Twitter and such. And Pete, tell them a little bit how they could join the All-Stars program.
Right. So basically anybody can be an All-Star. An All-Star is a very active IGN community member. If you're listening to this right now, you are either an All-Star or an IGN community member. So in case you guys would like to be an All-Star, head over to IGN.com, type in IGN All-Star in the search engine, and click on the IGN All-Star wiki. And basically... like I said, being an IGN All-Star is someone who is very active in the IGN community. Either you're watching videos, you're submitting blogs, you're chatting with people on the boards, which I highly encourage you to do because that just opens up, a plethora of conversations, really, and they're really cool people. But not everybody is going to be accepted as an IGN All-Star, so only those who are, like I said, and I reiterate, very active community members on IGN.com will be selected. Being an IGN All-Star absolutely has its perks. Now, you get IGN Prime for free, which is $30 a month if you're not an IGN All-Star.
It's pretty good.
It's fantastic because I remember being very irritated that I had to watch ads.
The ads.
I did not want to watch any more. They're like Hunger Games trailers and stuff like that. Like stuff like that made me sick to my stomach. And the fact that I actually got hooked up with IGN Prime, and big shout out to Ryan Palmer. He's the guy who hooked me up with it.
Community,
community
organizer Ryan Palmer.
Yeah, definitely hit him up on Twitter. You can find him there, and as well as the board. But yeah, man, I mean, basically everybody should go and check it out. It doesn't take much. It's super easy, and the IGN community is filled with great people. So you should go check it out too. IGN.com, search IGN All-Star in the search engine and get hooked up.
Yeah, just do it. It doesn't hurt, especially if you're on IGN.com most of the time. You're in the comments section. You're writing blogs and stuff. It doesn't hurt to actually throw your name into the hat there and actually become an IGN All-Star. Yeah. You even get free games through IGN IGN Prime. With the free Prime status, every month or a couple weeks or so, you'll end up getting a free code for a Steam key. For different games that IGN will give away. I know this at one point they gave away Nidhogg.
Right.
They gave away. I believe that they also gave away Rogue Legacy.
Right.
I believe at one point.
And the newest game that's out right now is, I believe it's called Dungeon of the Endless. It's a roguelike tower defense video game by Amplitude Studios. It's a PC video game.
Definitely. With that being said, there is no IGN community spotlight this week, guys. Unfortunately, unfortunately, it's not about that time. It's much like how it's not about that time to get a new Rock Band game. Who knows? But we did get one comment. Again, I encourage you guys to throw in some more comments on the episodes of the podcast, as well as write into us at allstarpod@hotmail.com. But MK1982 says, really enjoyed the last episode. I'm sure this one will be just as good as before. And he's referring to our episode 11 of the podcast we put up last week, which was a little bit late. Right. A lot of factors dealing with that because I was up in New York and rendering the podcast and such. But thanks again for that comment, MK1982, one of the mods, one of our good friends over there and such. We have a lot of neat surprises in the works, Pete. A lot of cool stuff. And one thing I will say is that, we're always open to suggestions and helping make the podcast better. Am I right?
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
Any good, suggestions that you guys might have, let us know. Leave us comments. If you guys want to see different stuff going on in the podcast, different people on the podcast, people maybe we could go get as guests, here and there.
Yeah.
Let us know. I mean, we have a couple that are in the works that we can't kind of get too much into now because, they're not finalized yet. But we have some big ones for you that I'm pretty sure that you guys are going to be very, very excited about. I'm really excited about it. I want to tell you guys I'm kind of ecstatic too, but, I got to hold my tongue, unfortunately. But some really good stuff that, is going to make this podcast even better than before. So we're on episode 12. We hit 10, so we're good with the first 10 run, such. But in addition to that, what helps also the podcast is if you subscribe to iTunes. You listen to the podcast on iTunes, you get your audio version. We have a new feed for the iTunes, RSS feed right now that you guys, unlike our older one, it's a little bit more organized, and we have all the episodes from 1 to 11, including this one, backed up, which is great. A lot of people want to listen to past episodes, see our growth, see what other stuff we had to say and such. But if you guys can't, go on iTunes, look up the IGN All-Star Community Podcasts on there and subscribe to us and rate us, because it helps get the awareness of the podcast, as well as also visit myign.com, which a blog post will be made with this episode with the video version on there, and all the links that you guys could go to leave us some feedback, leave us some questions that we could read here and also answer on the podcast. It's really helpful for us, big time.
Yeah, and a big thank you to everyone who's been sticking it out with us since episode 1. We absolutely appreciate it. In the very beginning of the show, our first episode, our audio was kind of bad, right? Or at least my audio.
Our audio was terrible.
And even the second episode was like that. And I think it was the third episode where we finally nailed it, or at least I finally nailed it on the head, right?
Leveled it up.
I leveled up my audio game, and people could have just left and stopped listening right after the first episode. So I just want to take a quick moment and say thank you very much for listening to the podcast and sticking it out. And I really appreciate it. And like Jake James was saying, we can absolutely use the feedback. Let us know what we need to do to improve our show, because this show is for the IGN community. Jake James and I, as well as many others, are very active IGN community members. It's our IGN is our go-to place for basically everything that is video games. So we want to just hang out with you guys. So just let us know. Send us an email. It's a Hotmail account. It's allstarpod@hotmail.com. And like Jake James was saying, we also have a Twitter account, which is at allstarpod on Twitter.
Definitely. Yeah. Thanks so much, listeners. We'll keep listening to us, and we'll keep giving you guys a good podcast every week. It's pretty awesome stuff. All the news, all the stuff. it's pretty cool. Now, with that being said, it's time to wrap this up. Any other final thoughts, Pete, before we kind of let these kitties go?
Dude, I'm just still very much excited for Project Ukulele. I want another Banjo game just as bad as you.
I got an Xbox One now. I want my Banjo game.
Yeah.
I feel entitled for a Banjo game right now.
Have you got to open up your Xbox One yet and try it?
Yes, I have.
Quick thoughts. What are your thoughts so far on Xbox One?
I've played with the Xbox One before. It's okay. It's all right. It's good. I mean, right now I'm doing some freelance work now for a game I can't talk about, which is technically my first full game on my Xbox One that I'm playing and doing stuff with it. I'm also, I got a chance to dive into some Killer Instinct, and I also borrowed Destiny for Xbox Ones that I'm going to be diving into. I have to kind of jump on Xbox Live and get on that at some point. But overall, the system's okay. I finally got a new TV with it because Microsoft, they don't like component cables apparently. So I got to go get a new TV that was HDMI compatible and actually have that. But it looks nicer. It works well and stuff, and it looks good in my setup. It looks clean.
Awesome.
Very
cool.
It's
so
really
you
good. I can't wait.
Came to the good side. You bought an Xbox One.
The good side. Let me tell you something about the good side. Okay, the good side, unfortunately, was that PlayStation 4 that's waiting for me. It's calling to me. I feel the pull from the Force trying to get me a PlayStation 4. But hopefully, eventually, soon, I could get it and I could have all three consoles.
Yeah,
that'll be pretty sweet. But yeah, I'm liking it.
Cool.
I'm liking these good so far. With that being said, though, this ends episode 12. So, yeah, you guys might have noticed a little bit of an audio hiccup right here. And I'm blaming this right now on the actual mentioning of episode 13 because, some things come to deliver us some bad luck. But we're going to end this off right, even though it's like a little bit of a little hiccup right there and there. Such. But this has been episode 12 of the IGN All-Star Community Podcast. Hopefully we can finish it now this time.
Yeah, hopefully.
Like that. Hopefully, right? So we thank you guys for listening, and we hope to see you guys again, next week where we bring you guys episode 13. Did anything happen? We're good? Okay, we're good. Yeah. We bring you guys episode 13 of the podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We will talk to you guys again real soon. Peace out, and stay epic, everybody.